The readings that we encounter throughout the whole summer are the parables from the 13th chapter of Matthew. And they are absolute gems. I encourage you, when you have time, to read them over again. But I want to focus on the very first parable that was given to us today. A farmer in the field plants his seed, and then somebody comes in the middle of the night where they were asleep and sowed darnel, which is basically weeds, and they get up, they see eventually as the weed and the wheat begins to sprout, they see darnel has been planted. They assume it is from an enemy, so instead of gathering up the wheat, the darnel rather, because they were afraid that the wheat might be taken up with it, they just let it both grow until harvest time. A couple of points that are really important in this story. The first is important to note how the evil one gets in. That's when the farmer and his servants were asleep. Sleep in a biblical sense is not paying attention spiritually. We have lots of examples in the Bible of this, but I'll mention just two. First, David was asleep in his palace when after he wakes up, he encounters Bathsheba. And we all know what happens then. The next moment is when the apostles were in the garden with Jesus, and the disciples were asleep. And Jesus comes back to wake them up. He goes back to pray. They fall asleep again. And then when they finally wake up, the guards have come to take Jesus and lead him to his passion. The point of this is that evil happens when we're not paying attention. Think of the absolutely horrible abuse scandals that have taken place in the church. How did that happen? People who should have been paying attention simply weren't, and were overlooking it. The price of freedom, the price of sanctity, is constant vigilance. You always have to be awake when evil comes. Then the story goes on, and it's an important reminder that nothing in this story is an excuse to tolerate evil, but it's how we deal with evil that's important. Remember, the servants come to the farmer and say, "Do you want us to pull up the darnel now?" Well, no, because if you do that, you might pull out the wheat as well. Anyone who's done gardening will know that when the plants start to sprout, once you've cleared the soil, weeds will start coming up as well, and at its very early stages, it's very difficult to tell them apart. It's only when they start to grow that you start clearly seeing, okay, that's a weed, that's the plant I want to grow. So evil doesn't come to us in a direct assault. If it did, we'd all see it, we'd know how to deal with it. But it comes sort of sneakily, it comes in behind. It comes in mixed with the wheat. In its early stages, it's, again, very difficult to tell them apart, the wheat from the darnel. Another example would be the example of cancer growing on a healthy organ. The organ, be it a pancreas or a lung, for example, are good things. But the cancer grows off what is good. That is the nature of evil. Evil cannot exist in and of itself. It has to take something that is good and thrive off of that. So how do we deal with evil? That's the question this parable is giving us the answer to. And the answer is very carefully. Ask any surgeon. Somebody who's suffering from pancreatic cancer, somebody who's suffering from lung cancer. You don't just barge in and take out the whole lung or the whole pancreas. No. You have to be very careful. You have to remove the area that's infected and keep the part which is healthy. Give you another more blatant example. In America, there was a movement not all that long ago, maybe about 20 years, a very fringe minority who thought blowing up abortion clinics or assassinating, murdering basically abortion doctors or abortion care workers was somehow acceptable. What they failed to realize is that by killing human beings, you are killing human beings that are equally loved by God as well. You deal with spiritual evil carefully through love. That's important. I'm going to repeat that. You deal with spiritual evil carefully and with love, always for the person. That's a hard lesson to learn because we're very impatient. We live in an instant gratification society. We take our fast food. We select the television programs we want to watch. We don't wait for a particular hour to watch the program. We watch it at our own choosing. Everything we want can be given to us, instant gratification. But God is teaching us we have to deal with things carefully, always with love. Another hard lesson to learn is the fact that sometimes God will allow evil to take place for a greater good. It's times when there's great struggle, there's times when there's great evil that gives us rise for the saints to come up. Again, and this is important, this is not an excuse for any of us to be spiritually lazy or to tolerate evil. We can't say, God will take care of it. No, we see evil, we have to deal with it. But think of the saints that have emerged from the result of great evil in our very nation and around the world. Think of Margaret Clitheroe and Anne Boleyn, who were hiding priests during the tyranny of Elizabeth I. Think of Thomas More, who defied Henry VIII in defense of the faith. Think of another more recent example, Maximilian Kolbe and Edith Stein in the face of the evil of Adolf Hitler. God's will is supreme, and it has a purpose. And think on this. Given all of the abuse scandals that have taken place in our beloved church, do you honestly think now that the church is a safer place or a less safer place? After all of the reforms, after all of the changes that have been forced to take place because of that great evil, a dispassionate observer would have to say, yes, the church is definitely a safer place now for children and vulnerable people. As soon as you walk into this church, you take a church bulletin. You know who the safeguarding representatives are. You don't know that? Take a look to the left-hand side of the church. You see them and their contact details. Myself as a priest, I have to go through various safeguarding trainings. One of the first outside parish workshops I had to attend was, guess what? Safeguarding. All of it is important. None of it would have happened if it were not for the great evil that resulted from this scandal. So as we continue in our spiritual journey, let us always be mindful that when we encounter evil, we deal with it, but always through the love that our Lord Jesus Christ showed to all sinners.